I will be your host, Rabbi Roni Handler, joined on the Bima by Cantor Benjamin Greenfield. And it is lovely to see you all. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Oh, that'd be good.
It is movie themed.
It is movie themed. This Shabbat is movie themed. So we come together to celebrate Shabbat, to welcome Shabbat, and to celebrate with Davin. Woohoo! What? Did we get a laugh track for that too, or is that like the applause? Okay. It just makes me think of that scene from Shrek where like they're holding up the sign. So we begin and kick off our weekend of festivities for you, which we have been talking about for many years. And believe it or not, it's finally here. And so we're going to get started on page 4 with the lighting of our Shabbat candles. And I would love to invite Tom and Pace and Hayden and Davin to come on up to help us to light the candles so that we can welcome Shabbat together. And if you don't mind leading us in the blessing. Sure. Well, can Tom do the match? It's all right. Tomorrow you can light the match.
This is what you get.
Baruch Adonai
Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehalikeh shel Shabbat.
Shabbat Shalom. Have a seat. Wrong holiday. Davin, you stay up here. Grab your siddur. And we are Davin is going to lead us in Shalom Aleichem on page 5. And we're going to sing with you. As we sing this prayer on the bottom of page 5, Shalom Aleichem, we acknowledge that we welcome in the air conditioning, which just kicked on, which is really nice. And we welcome in the angels of Shabbat. And it says that we welcome these angels. We pray that they come to us, that they bless us and we bless them, and that they then go out in peace again. And so this weekend, you are literally welcoming angels from all over the country to come celebrate with you. Some have already arrived, some are en route. So we pray for their safe journeys, that they arrive here in safety, and that they will bring many blessings to you. We hope that they feel blessed by being in your presence and being able to celebrate with us, and that when the time comes that they will go and return in peace as well. So please feel free to join with us. Our prayers are both in Hebrew and in transliteration, and so you're welcome to join in as you are able.
Gotcha.
We'll sing with you.
Take
The
two.
same
All right.
spot I told you it was on Sunday morning.
Do I remember Sunday morning?
Do I?
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi-Melech Malachei Hamlachim, Kadosh Baruch Hu.
Boachem leshalom, malachei hashalom, malachei elyon. Mi-melech malachei hamelachim, hakadosh baruch hu. Baruch hu leshalom, malachei hashalom, malachei elyon. Mi-melech malachei hamelachim, hakadosh baruch hu. Tzichem leshalom, malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyon. Mimelech, Malachei HaMalachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
You can have a seat, Dad. And we turn to page 10 as we continue on the top of the page with Yedid Nefesh.
Yedid Nefesh Av HaRachaman Mishuch Avdach El Ritzonach Yarutz Avdach Gemo Ayah Yishachaveh Mul Hadorach Yeravlu Yedidutach Minofetzuf V'chol ta'am Adonai Ezil la'olam Nafshi chulat avatach Ana elna refana Allah Beharut la noam zivach Astit chazek v'tidrapeh v'hayet halach shivkat olam Yadadai-dai-dai-dai, yadadai-dai-dai-dai, yadadai-dai-dai-dai-dai-dai-dai-dai, yadadai-dai-dai-dai, yadadai-dai-dai-dai-dai-dai-dai, yadadai-dai-dai-dai-dai-dai, yadadai-dai-dai-dai-dai-dai-dai-dai.
We continue on page 11 as we move into Kabbalat Shabbat. And this section of our service is meant to help us to get ready for Shabbat, to receive Shabbat. That's what Kabbalah means, to receive. And so every week we recognize that it is hard to just hurry up and get here in the midst of work or travel or getting ready for bar mitzvah or whatever it is that you are doing, and to just show up and kind of be ready for all of that. And so Kabbalat Shabbat kind of gives us a second to take a deep breath and to recognize that we have arrived and to allow ourselves to settle in so that we are really then ready to open ourselves up and so that we can receive Shabbat and receive the gift of Shabbat, of this moment that grants us the opportunity to rest, to be together, and to hopefully bring more joy and peace into the world. And so we will sing together on the top of page 11. The whole family, they can all come up. Mayan and Dali, if you want to come up, you're welcome to. So we are going to sing at the top of page 11. Let us go and sing to Adonai, God. Let us trumpet praise to our protector. We should have had a trumpet. That would have really made it. But a lot of the Psalms of Kabbalat Shabbat are really meant to encourage us to sing, to kind of find whatever our song is, Hopefully it's on key. But to find whatever our song is and to just sing it out. And hopefully it's beautiful, no matter what.
And since no one invited me to have a moment to say anything to Davin in this whole experience, I am just going to say, take this one, which is that Rhodey said to me like 3 days ago, do you want to come and play? And I said, would I like to be an amateur musician in front of my whole family? Yes, I would. I would be thrilled to do that, having never practiced this with any of the people we're going to sing with. But more than that, I said, there's nothing I would rather do than the same thing that Davin and I enjoy doing in the house, which is like sitting around and messing around and playing music. And it's been so much fun. Just getting to watch you become a far greater musician than I will ever be, but such a joy to like just play with you and geek out about Potter, and I'm very excited for this day for you, and very excited for the very capable and confident and highly hysterical adult that you are becoming. So with that, I offer this totally unrehearsed tribute to my amateur musical abilities.
And whether or not you know the words, you can always pass
Don't
it on.
undersell.
Don't undersell your musical abilities. You held your own.
I know. That's
Two months
true.
ago.
Your mother was the biggest help of all in that moment.
3 months.
3 months ago now. All right, here we go. I'll give us a little intro to maybe give us a chance here.
We continue on page 14 with, at the red arrow, Yismachu hashamayim v'tagel ha'aretz, the heavens shall be glad and the earth rejoice. And so as we move into this psalm, as we move into Psalm 96, I want to invite all of you to think back on your weeks as we move into Shabbat. It is a wonderful opportunity, as we do this every week, to really notice the things that happened in our week that were particularly joyful, that we want to hold on to as we move into Shabbat, that we don't want to forget, that we want to take with us through Shabbat and out the other side. It's also an opportunity to let go of things that were maybe more difficult this week that did not bring us joy. Maybe we can learn from them and let them go and not take them with us. But if there's something that was particularly joyful this week that anyone's thinking about, if you want to share it with the rest of us, I invite you to do so.
I heard that there's this cool new rabbi listening called PTBJ on the internet. And that was pretty exciting.
I guess that happened this week.
Yeah.
I got a new job. Yeah, it was pretty exciting. I don't know if I can top that.
Well, the fact that you're doing Zabbath bar mitzvah as your first bar mitzvah.
Okay, that's top that. Who would have guessed when I gave you that date? Oh, you moved to a new office.
Let go of the stress of that and enjoy it.
Where's the new office?
It's just down the street from my old office.
Oh. So it'll totally new life, totally new commute.
It's got new paint
Oh, I have to.
and a new office now.
I'll have to come see it. Did you leave the physical therapists behind, or did they come with you?
No, they came.
Oh, very nice. I'm glad you could all come
You're all
together.
invited.
I look forward to making an appointment and seeing your
Yes,
new
please
office.
do.
Is it
Yes.
closer or further
Bring
away?
your insurance card, we need
I
money.
know. Closer. Oh, good. But like so before the train tracks.
Yes, before the track.
Before the track. You're on the other side of the
We're now
track.
on this side of the track.
All right. So hopefully that means you're moving up in the world. That's good. Anyone else?
Good things this week.
Dahlia got a 40 out of 40 on the math test. That was pretty exciting.
That's nearly 100%.
Anything else? Anyone? Yeah?
Diane found her name in shoes.
Oh, there you go. If you know how many shoes Diane has, you know that that is quite a feat.
Yes,
So,
I know.
but
Quite a feat.
That show right there was an honor of your father.
well, I invite you to consider the question, continue to consider the question as we continue to move through our service, so that you can recognize the joy, because sometimes these things just sort of happen and pass us by, and we don't really take time to appreciate them. So it's a nice opportunity to kind of notice, appreciate, take in, and hopefully take with you a little bit of that joy and happiness as we continue through Shabbat. So feel free to join with us at the red arrow, either in Hebrew or in transliteration.
ישמחו השמיים,
השמיים.
ישמחו
השמיים.
השמיים, ישמחו השמיים, וטייל הארץ. ישמחו השמיים, ישמחו השמיים, ישמחו השמיים, וטייל הארץ. Yerim hayam, yerim hayam, yerim hayam, umelu. Yerim hayam, yerim hayam, yerim hayam, umelu.
Continue on page 16. 4 lines up from the bottom in the Hebrew and in the transliteration with Psalm 97.
Oy zarua latzadik, oy yishrei lev simcha. Oy zarua latzadik, oy yishrei lev simcha. Oy zarua latzadik, oy yishrei lev simcha. Oy yishrei lev simcha. Oy zarua latzadik, oy yishrei lev simcha. Oy yishrei lev simcha.
We turn ahead now to page 23 for Lecha Dodi. And as we sing this prayer, the chorus is Lecha Dodi likrat kala p'nei Shabbat nekabala. Come, my beloved, to welcome the bride. Let us greet Shabbat as she arrives. It's pretty rhymey, yes, both in English and in Hebrew. But it reminds us that every week when we welcome Shabbat, we're supposed to have that same kind of joy and anticipation as we would feel if we were attending a wedding. And so we do have a lot of joy and anticipation as we look forward to celebrating Davin's bar mitzvah. But not every week is a bar mitzvah. Not every week is your bar mitzvah. And you're like, whew, thank goodness for that. But yet we say this prayer every single week. And so that's kind of a challenge to be able to practice having that same kind of excitement again and again and again every Friday. But hopefully there is, as we continue to change and grow, there's something new and exciting either that we can look forward to or that we bring to it. But that is kind of what we're supposed to be thinking as we move into Lecha Dodi. So Davin, come on up. And you're going to help lead us in Lecha Dodi. Whenever you're ready.
Move closer to the microphone. No,
These are pretty powerful.
not these.
Yeah.
Yes.
There we go. Okay. Lecha Dodi likrat kala
Pnei Shabbat Mekavela, Lecha Dodi Likrat Kala, Pnei Shabbat Mekavela. Shamor B'Zachor B'Dibor Echad, Hishmianu El HaMiuchad, Adonai Echad, U'Shemo Echad, L'Shemo Tiferet V'Lichila.
Lecha,
Lecha
Dodi,
Dodi, Lecha Dodi Likrat Kala, Pnei Shabbat Mekavela, Lecha Dodi Likrat Kala, Pnei Shabbat Mekavela.
Likrat
Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, Ki mekor habracha, Merosh miked nesucha, Zamase v'machshava tefillah.
Lecha,
Lecha
Dodi,
Dodi, Lecha Dodi Likrat Kala, Pnei Shabbat Mekavela, Lecha Dodi Likrat Kala, Pnei Shabbat Mekavela. Mikdash Melech Ir Melucha, Kum Mitzeim Mitoch HaHafecha, Ramlach Shevet Ba'emek HaBacha, Ve'hu Yagmol Alayechem La.
Lecha,
Lecha
Dodi,
Dodi, Lecha Dodi Likrat Kala, Pnei Shabbat Mekavela, Lecha Dodi Likrat Kala, Pnei Shabbat Mekavela.
We turn to page 25 and continue with the second verse.
Yaminu Shmo Tifrotzi, Ve'et Adonai Taritzi, Al Yanish Ben Partzi, V'nismecha v'nagila.
Lecha,
Lecha
Dodi,
Dodi, Lecha Dodi Likrat Kala, Pnei Shabbat Mekavela, Lecha Dodi Likrat Kala, Pnei Shabbat Mekavela.
We rise for the last verse on page 25 and face the door as we symbolically welcome our Sabbath Queen.
Bo'ii v'shalom ateret ba'ala, Gam b'simcha u'b'tzola, Toch emunei amzegula, Bo'ii hala, Bo'ii hala.
oh, sorry, Lecha,
Dodi,
Dodi,
Lecha Dodi Likrat Kala, Pnei Shabbat Mekavela, Lecha Dodi Likrat Kala, Pnei Shabbat Mekavela.
You may be seated. We continue on page 27 with the Psalm for Shabbat.
Mizmor shel Yom HaShabbat, Elad Adonai, Ozamer Shemcha Yelech Yavuz,
Page 28 at the red arrow.
Tzadik atama yifrach, ke'erez bavanun yizkeh shetulim beveit Adonai bechatzrot Eloheinu yafrichu od yenuvun beseva teshenim verananim yiu lehagid yashar Adonai to Mitzuri velo avlatapo.
We flip ahead now to page 39. Hopefully we're feeling all warmed up because now we move into our evening service, more officially, our Marif service. And I will invite you to rise, if you're comfortable and able to do so, for our Baruch prayer.
Baruch hu el Adonai Hamavorach.
Baruch Adonai Havorach Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch levarach le'olam va'ed.
You may be seated.
ומעביר יום לילה, מבדיל בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו חי וקיים, תלמידים לך עלינו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני, המעריב הרבים.
Continue on the top of page 40.
אהבת עולם מישראל, עמך אהבת, תורה ומצוות, חוקים ומשפטים, אותנו לימדת. על כן אדוני אלוהינו, בשוכבנו ובקומנו, נצליח בחוקיך, ונשמח בדברי תורתך, ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו לאורך ימינו, לאורך ימינו, ובהם נגד יומם ולילה, יומם ולילה, ויעבדך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל.
Davin, come on back up as we turn to page 41, and he will lead us in Shema and Via Hafta. 41.
Thank you, yes. Right, okay. Shema
Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך, ושיננתם לבדיך, ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, ושרתם להיות על ידיך, והיו לטרפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובישעריך.
We continue silently on page 42.
Adonai Elohechem emet.
We turn ahead to page 44 as we have the words of Mihamocha, which are the words that we learned that Miriam sang and led the people in singing after the Israelites crossed the Sea of Reeds. So it wasn't so long ago that we sat around our Passover Seders and talked about this story. But we have this reminder in our service more than once a day, every single day, kind of a pivotal moment in the story. And we're reminded of this event again and again throughout Jewish tradition.
ומלכות הברית קיבלה עליהם משה ומרים בפני ישראל לכל שירה בשמחה רבה ויאמרו כולם מי כמוך באלים אדוני מי כמוך נאמר בקודש נולדתי לו ספר מלכותך רבניך בקיים לפני משה זלינו ויאמרו Adonai yimloch li'olam va'ed v'ne'emai v'ada Adonai et Yaakov u'galam yad chazak mimenu baruch et Adonai Gad Yisrael.
On the top of page 45, we have a Hashkivenu prayer, which is a prayer that we recite every single night before we go to sleep, both during the week and on Shabbat. And it is a prayer that we pray to God that we can go to sleep at night, hopefully sleep peacefully in the night, not always easy, and that we will wake up again in joy. And that we ask God to spread out over this Sukkot Shalom, this canopy of peace over us and over all the world. And so as we sing these words, Rufos Aleinu Sukkot Shlomecha, it's also an opportunity for us to notice all the parts of ourselves that might be in need of a little extra healing or compassion, a little bit of that Sukkot Shalom in our lives, and also to recognize the other people or places in the world that might be in need of that kind of shalom, that kind of peace in this moment. And so we send this peace over to anyone here and anyone in our communities and around the world who need this, and hopefully they will soon be able to wake up again in peace.
Ufros aleinu Sukkot, Sukkot, Shelomecha, Ufros aleinu Sukkot, Sukkot, Shelomecha. Baruch Adonai, habarei Sukkot Shalom Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, Ya Yerushalayim.
Continue on the top of page 46. Davin, come and join us. Vishamru.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
Top.
Yes, all right, I knew that, okay. Vish.
Yeah, that was good, that was good.
Yeah.
Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasot et ha-Shabbat L'dorotam b'rit olam B'ni u'b'nei Yisrael Oti li'olam Oti li'olam Oti li'olam Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasot et ha-Shabbat L'dorotam b'rit olam Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et ha-shamayim v'et ha'aretz Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasot et ha-Shabbat L'dorotam b'rit olam Ubayom hashmi Shabbat vayinafash Shabbat vayinafash Shabbat vayinafash Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasot et Yotam Barit Olam.
We continue with Hatzi Kaddish in the middle of the page.
Oh, that's me, okay. Yikada, Vikada, Shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Vyomad Divra, Kirte, Vyamlich Machute, Bechaye Konu, Vyomechon, Uchaye Dekol Beit Yisrael, Bagala, Bagala, Uvizman Kariv, Vimru, Amen, Yeheshme Rabba Mevarach, Li'alam Le'amaya Yitbarach, Yipara, Vishtabach, Vietnamar, Vietnama, Vietnase, Vietadar, Vietale, Vietalal, Shemeda Kudisha, Brechu, Leolam, Mim Kol, Birchata, Vishir Hata, Tushmechata, Nehemata, Damira, Meomad, Vimru, Amen.
We turn to page 47, and I invite you to rise for our Amidah. And so this is an opportunity in our service to move through the Siddur in Hebrew or in English from pages 47 to 52, and we do so silently on our own. And so it is also an opportunity, if you wish to instead have just a few minutes to acknowledge the prayers in your own heart.
Say shalom Mimramav, Uyai say shalom Aleinu, V'yarko Yisrael, V'imru, Amen. Yaseh shalom, Shalom Aleinu, V'yarko Yisrael, Yaseh shalom, Shalom Aleinu, V'yarko Yisrael, V'imru, Amen.
Page 54.
Yeh Rabbi Gera Shemei Rabbah, V'yamani Rachirte, V'yamlich Malchute, V'chayechol, V'yamechon, V'chayechol, V'yisrael, Bagad Lav, Smakari, V'imru, Amen. Yeheshme Rabba Mevarach, Le'olam Le'amei Omaya Yitbarach, Yebarach V'yishamach V'yidbar V'yisrael Yisrael V'yidbar V'yisrael 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 ויאללה מקבחת ושרת תוש בחת בנחמת דמי רמי אמה וימרו.
Amen.
תיגע בסלון הון ויותכון תחי ישראל קודם בהון וישמע וימרו.
Amen.
יהי שלום רבי ישמע בחיים עלינו ואל כל ישראל וימרו.
Amen.
עשה שלום ברומם יעשה שלום עלינו ואל כל ישראל כל ישראל וימרו. Amen.
So, hi everyone. If I were to say to you, for the next 6 years, you're going to get a job, you're going to work every day, and then in the 7th year, 6 days a week, yeah, there you go. And then in the 7th year, you're going to stop. 7th year, no work, just rest. And then the following year, the cycle would repeat. What about this scenario sounds appealing? What would you say? Does that sound good? Yeah? I have a very vigorous yes from Davin. Sounds good? You're down? Every 7th year, big old rest?
Sounds great.
Any questions that you have? Anyone who disagrees, who does not like this idea? Davin?
Well, what are the rules of spending here? Because you see, every year if you spend your year of what you made, then in the 7th year you won't have anything. But if you split everything up, then in the 7th year you'll still, majority won't get anything. So how do you spend it? Will you spend everything that you had in the past 6 years?
Well, Davin has spent some time with this Parsha, and I think your Uncle Babbitt would appreciate your question.
He'd be appalled at the question. He'd be appalled at even a question.
So there.
the same schedule here, we all have the same.
Oh, that's a good question. Do I get to pick my 6 years and you pick your 6 years, and so it's all staggered, or is it like the whole world? Like, is there like a worldwide vacation that happens every 7th year, like spring break for a whole year? Or what would that look like? Or is it that like I take my 6 years, like so like in a family, it could be like I take my 6 years now, but like you wait so that we're never without an income. That would be a different way of doing it, yeah? So that would be, so if, is there one that's more appealing or less appealing?
Everyone now, since there's signs, help wanted.
Yeah, maybe.
It is a true thing.
Right, okay. So it seems that the Haley family has spent some time with this Parsha. So unfortunately, it is not a choose your own adventure scenario that we're talking about. It would be the entire world kind of doing this at once, which could be really awesome, maybe. Definitely answers some of the questions of like, how does that work in our families, and how do I know? It's like, hi, I'm Roni, I'm in year 3. Like, it feels a little bit like, you know, hi, I'm a freshman, I live in Thurston on the 6th floor. Like, feels a little like that. But it wouldn't be that because everyone would do it at the same time. But there's still maybe some complications, as Davin points out. Like, what happens in that 7th year? So we kind of like, okay, we're working for the 6th, but like, how do we also then live in the 7th? Isabel's concerned about who's pouring her drinks, but Davin's worried about,
Dispensing my
medication. But Davin's worried about like how he's going to be spending and how he was able to properly save for that.
He's selling, I'm spending.
And who's right? So how are you? Like, what is there even to spend on? Because what is there to sell? I mean, there seems to be a supply chain issue, so apparently nothing. So living within this system would be difficult. There's a lot of questions that we would need to answer. And it is also a scenario that would certainly require a whole lot of trust and a whole lot of faith. And I can imagine that as nice as this break might be, and a lot of us were sort of on board with like, all right, like let's have that big old break that 7th year. As nice as that sounds, we might also have some reservations for a variety of reasons. So in this week's Torah portion in Bahar, we learn about such a system. Davin's going to teach us about that tomorrow. And how we might understand these instructions for today. But I want to kind of take us in a little bit of a different direction to consider this. I'm trying not to steal your thunder. Let's consider this instruction for a moment in the context of the Israelites in the Torah, who we're going to be reading about, who would have been receiving this instruction for the very first time. So, you know, they heard it, they passed it down, and we still read it today, but let's think about it for them who heard it for the very first time. So, despite the fact that we read about the Israelites' liberation from slavery in Egypt, first in the Torah back in January, then again when we sat down for our Passover Seder. Not a lot of time has actually passed in Torah time from when we first read about this in January to kind of when we're reading about it now, this week in our Parsha. So that means that this scrappy group of newly freed slaves that are still learning how to be a free people. They're still downloading numerous laws that God told Moses for Moses to then share with them for how to live in relationship with one another. That's what we've been doing for the entire book of Leviticus. Leviticus closes out next week. This is all like happening right now for them. They're learning how to live in relationships with one another. They're learning how to live in relationship with the land that they will eventually be, that they're headed toward, the promised land. And they're learning how to be in relationship with God. They spend a lot of time talking about all of this throughout the Torah. And we also know that this isn't the first time, nor is it the last time, that they're going to be asked to trust in some way. So if you recall, if you were following along with us, or if you've heard this in years past, back in Exodus, just a short time after the Israelites had fled Egypt, the Israelites shockingly began kvetching, or grumbling, to Moses. They did this sometimes. At that point, they were hungry. And even they went so far as to say in the Torah, this is what it says, they hyperbolically said that they would have been better off if Moses would have left them in Egypt rather than bringing them out in the wilderness to die. Sounds like something that either a toddler or like an old Jewish grandmother would say, but that's what the Israelites said. So in response, God could have said a lot of things, but God didn't punish them for complaining. So I guess we should remember that when others complain in our midst. Rather, God heard their prayers, which was a real need. They had a need for sustenance in that moment. Because here they are wandering in the desert. It wasn't so easy. They hadn't yet gotten all of the laws for the way in which they would be able to sacrifice animals and eat meat. They hadn't gotten that yet, and so they were sort of like neither here nor there with knowing what to eat or having any food because they had just left Egypt. So God heard their prayers and sent them manna from heaven, is what we read in Torah. The manna was sent down to sustain them in the wilderness as they traveled along. And with that, the people then learned to trust in God. What we know about manna is that each day the manna would fall from the sky, they would eat what they needed, and that was it. We don't really know what it tasted like, we don't really know what it looked like. Sometimes imagine it to be a little like tofu. But if a person got scared and thought, what if it doesn't come tomorrow? Like the manna came today, but what if it doesn't come tomorrow? Maybe I should just take a little extra for today in my purse. Kind of like Bubby used to do with the rolls in the restaurant. Maybe I should just take a little extra for today and hold on to it just in case. Or if they got greedy and thought, I'll just save a little extra so that I can have even more tomorrow. Like what if I have someone over and I want to give them a little manna? Or maybe, one of these things could have happened. But in either case, the manna would spoil. They couldn't hold on to any extra. The only exception to this rule was that on Shabbat, the seventh day, it did not spoil. On the sixth day, extra manna would fall from the sky. And they were instructed that they should take in an extra amount. At this point, maybe they knew how much they needed. Maybe they're using the containers. They knew how much they needed. And so they knew what they would need for the next day. And they would take that in, and this time it wouldn't spoil. But this only happened on Shabbat. On the seventh day, the manna did not spoil, and so they were able to be sustained this extra day until the manna fell again on Sunday. So God's system of providing manna, but not allowing the people to hoard or even store it, was the people's introduction to the Torah's approach to relating to all sorts of resources. Manna taught the people to trust in God and to cultivate an understanding that one should take and use what they need, but not to let greed or fear push them to take too much, which could also possibly leave too little for others. So now, in our Parsha, the people receive instructions for all of these different systems. There is the Jubilee, which is fun to say, Yovel, and Shemitah, or sabbatical rules. Rules which in many ways are an extension of the values and logic taught originally to the Israelites from this system of manna, of receiving manna. This time, though, Torah teaches that we should work the land for 6 years, not receive manna for 6 days, and then we should let it rest in the 7th. For the first 49 years, they can temporarily buy, sell, and trade land, and offer loans and receive payments back with interest. But in the 50th year, we learn that everything has to be released. Land returning to its original owners, and all debts are to be forgiven. For us, this might sound like an unfathomable way of approaching resources. or some sort of big giant trust exercise. Because imagining that you'll be able to prepare for a whole year, which was a little shocking to Davin as well, without working the land, or imagining that a business or an agricultural empire that you've just spent the last 6 years building up was actually ultimately only temporary, it seems like a big, giant, huge leap of faith that you will still be able to prosper in the future despite these limiting structures, that you have to start all over and do that all over again. For the people receiving the Torah in this moment, though, they're living with the confirmed faith and trust of the manna system. They know this. So maybe for them, this idea would have been a little bit more familiar. Maybe it felt like less of a leap because they had already experienced this in a little bit of a smaller way. Having just been slaves, perhaps they also couldn't even fathom having accruing so much and creating such like a giant agricultural empire in the first place. Or perhaps they knew too well the pain that can be caused by some people having too much power and have that power be in too few hands. They were just slaves in Egypt. And so maybe they're just willing to trust and try this new system regardless of what they think about it. Or maybe it sounded just as crazy to them as it kind of does to us right now. But they felt bound to try it out anyhow. God had just brought them out of slavery in Egypt, and now God was asking them to live with this set of rules, so they figured like, okay, what do I have to lose? May as well give it a try. So as Davin will explain tomorrow, even though we're not all farmers in the land of Israel, and even though we no longer practice the debt release and land return of Jubilee, we do still have a lot of lessons that we can draw from the laws of Shemitah found in our Parsha, and we'll share some of those tomorrow. It can be tempting to earn a good living, something we all strive to do, to accrue wealth, something we all strive to do, and to end up hoarding this wealth, though, like Ebenezer Scrooge. Maybe this temptation comes from fear of being without. I know I'm sure a lot of you, too, often heard stories from Aunt Baba M of the difficulties of living through the Depression, and that type of trauma can be very scarring or frightening and can make you really worry about where the next meal will come from or what's going to happen tomorrow. Or maybe the hoarding comes from pride in appreciating one's accomplishments, as we should. We should be proud of the work that we did, the time we put in, and what we were able to accomplish. And we should be able to kind of hold on to that and show that. Or maybe it comes from greed. But we're reminded here, and then we're reminded later in Deuteronomy, that like the manna and like the land, our wealth is actually not ours. Or at least it's not ours alone. We're told again and again in Torah that everything that we have is a blessing from God. And as such, we should treat what we have earned, or otherwise have come to have as precious blessings, as a gift, as something that's temporary, actually, to us. It's on loan. And the end goal is explained in the explanation of Shemitah that we have over in Deuteronomy. And so this is where it gets talked about a little bit different. So we have a heavy focus on farming here in Leviticus, but there it kind of takes a little bit of a turn. Miketz Shavat Shanim Ta'aseh Shemitah. Every 7th year, after a period of 7 years, you shall practice Shemitah. Only here, Shemitah is not only thought about as this sort of farming expedition, it is understood as a remission of debts. V'zeh devar hashmitah shamot kol ba'al Moshe yado asher yaseh bere'ehu lo yigosh et re'ehu ve'et achiv ki kara Shemitah l'Adonai. This shall be the nature of this Shemitah, of this remission. And this is why we translate it this way. All creditors shall remit the due that they claim from their fellow. They shall not dun their fellow or kin, for the remission proclaimed is for God. Efes ki lo yihiyeh becha evyon ki yivarechecha Adonai ba'aretz asher Adonai Elohecha noten lecha nachala l'rishtha. There shall be no needy among you, since your God, Adonai, will bless you in the land that your God, Adonai, is giving you as a hereditary portion. So the text over here in Deuteronomy implores us to remember that it is our job, as God's emissaries on earth, to ensure that there shall be no needy among you. When we do this, and we have to do this, but when we do this, God will bless us. God will bless us, God will bless our land, and all will be right with the world. And yet, we know, and it seems that God knows also, that sometimes we might need a little bit of a reminder of how to act in the world. And the system of Shemitah is our failsafe. For 6 years, we can go about our business, literally. God willing, being kind and generous with others. But then every 7 years, we reboot the system. We perform a factory reset, and then we start all over again. If we have been living with open hearts and generous spirits all along for these 6 years, perhaps we won't even feel the effects of the reset. We'll just kind of keep going. But if we haven't, then it might be felt a little bit more drastically. Then this is the moment where we can hopefully be woken up so that we can try again the next Shemitah cycle, because this is going to happen over and over again. And so maybe the next cycle we can be a little bit more kind and a little bit more generous, to give or accept when needed, to live more lightly on the land, and to be more open-hearted and loving in our relationships. There's a famous poem written by Judy Chicago entitled The Merger Poem, in which she paints a picture of the world that would be if we didn't take more than we needed, and if we treated one another with compassion and respect. It reads, "And then all that has divided us will merge, and then compassion will be wedded to power, and then softness will come to a world that is harsh and unkind. And then both men and women will be gentle, and then both women and men will be strong. And then no person will be subject to another's will. And then all will be rich and free and varied, and then the greed of some will give way to the needs of many. And then all will share equally in the earth's abundance. And then all will care for the sick and the weak and the old. And then all will nourish the young. And then will cherish life's creatures. And then all will live in harmony with one another and the earth. And then everywhere will be called Eden once again." Eden was the ideal moment in Torah, when humans, at least those first 2 humans, they wanted for nothing. They had everything they needed in the garden. It wasn't until Adam and Eve were banished from the garden that they were told that they must till and tend the land. And so it all began. Though returning to a physical Eden may not be possible in this lifetime, though this is the picture that we paint when we talk about the world to come, we must nevertheless strive to bring Eden to us, to create Eden in our time, in our place, and in our relationships. So, we're currently in a Shemitah year. We still have about 4 months to go. Starts over at Rosh Hashanah. So my question for all of you to think about is, what are the areas of your life that are in need of a factory reset? Which areas need to be evaluated to find a little bit more balance or more equanimity? I invite you to consider these questions over the course of Shabbat or over the next few months as we finish out the Shemitah year, because it's never too late to kind of do this, even though it started, several months ago. And I invite you to do this so that we could all be blessed as we restart the next cycle of 7 going into next year. Shabbat Shalom. So we will continue with our service as we move toward the end. And we turn to page 55, and we invite up Davin and Dahlia to help lead us in the Kiddush. Do you want to let Davin hold it?
Yeah.
Okay. You're going to hold it so that she doesn't spill it. Okay. Do you want to get us started with the first line? We'll join you.
Okay, gotcha. Baruch atah Adonai
Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Good job. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabach kodsho b'ahava u'ratzon hinchilanu, zikaron ma'aseh b'reishit. Ki hu yom techila v'nikra'ei kodesh, zecher l'tziat Mitzrayim. Ki banu b'charta v'yotanu kiddashta mikol ha'amim, v'shabbat kodshecha b'ahava u'ratzon Haltanu, Baruch Atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat. Amen.
Oh,
Hi.
It's great juice, I promise.
Sorry.
yes.
Poured it myself.
Are you gonna have some, or can I just?
You can finish. Have a seat.
Never seen that before.
I'm
Well, it's
crazy in
blessed.
here.
You have to finish it once it's blessed.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
Wait, where do you?
You can just leave that there. We turn to page 56, and I invite you to rise for Aleinu.
Aleinu v'shabeach l'Adon hakol, latit gedula liotzer breshit, shelo asanu k'gayei haratzon, v'lo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chavinu kahem, v'gor aleinu k'po hamonam, v'anachnu chorim, u'mishtachavim u'modim, לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, ונאמר, אל אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא, יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו
You may be seated. We flip ahead to page 63 for the counting of the Omer. And the blessing for counting the Omer is on page 63. And the actual counting will be found on page 68. So hold both of those little spots. And so the Omer is a period of time between Passover and Shavuot, where we count off 7 weeks. And we count each day within those 7 weeks. As we mark the time from the liberation and redemption in Egypt all the way to the revelation at Mount Sinai. And so every day has a little bit of a kavanah or intention attached to it, as does every week. And so I will say a little bit more about that after we count. But we will sing a little bit of the preamble to our blessing. Which the words are on page 63, but not exactly in the order that we're going to be singing them. We'll be skipping around a little bit. But it's a tradition to kind of get yourself ready for a mitzvah before you do the mitzvah. So you'll see that tomorrow, before Davin receives his talit, you kind of get ready with the talis, you say the blessing, and then you put it on. And so these are words that can kind of accompany us as we're getting ready, which mean I'm about to fulfill the mitzvah of counting the Omer as it is written in the Torah. You shall count from the eve of the second day of Pesach, when an Omer of grain is to be brought as an offering, 7 complete weeks. The day after the 7th week of your counting will make 50 days. Isabel, do you want to come on up and help lead us in the counting of the Omer? So this is a melody written by our friend Rabbi Yosef Goldman.
Also love words, but I didn't.
Next year. You don't need it. But you. Leshem yichud, kuchabrihu u'shchintei, hineni muchan u'mezuman, lekayem mitzvat ta'aseh, shel sfirat ha'omer, shel sfirat ha'omer, shel sfirat ha'omer, shel sfirat ha'omer, Sheva Shabbatot. Yep. Temimot tiyena, Sheva Shabbatot. Temimot tiyena, Sfirat ha'omer,
Asvirata Omer. Asvirata Omer. Asvirata Omer.
Bottom of page 68. Hayom Hamishi Shloshim Yom Shehem Hamisha Shavuot LaOmer. Today is 35 days, 5 weeks of the Omer. And so we are in the week of Hod, and it is the day of Malchut. So we say Malchut Shebahod. And so Hod means, it's a way of sort of, thank you. Malchut is sort of, we can think about it as majesty or grandeur or greatness. And Hod means either splendor or humility. So when we combine two of these things together, it's two sort of different pieces that we combine together every single day to see what kind of inspiration we can draw from that. So David Ebenbach writes that it might seem counterintuitive to figure out how we put together greatness and humility at the same time, and as we do so with Malchut and Hod. But he says that an effective manager knows that one's position is bolstered by having the confidence to delegate and to acknowledge the expertise of others. That a good teacher knows that you maintain students' respect not by pretending to know everything, an untenable position, but by being clear about what you do and don't know. A wise parent knows that it's better for everyone involved if you admit forthrightly to mistakes rather than masquerade as infallible. And so with that in mind, he encourages us to consider for ourselves that when we do something wrong, what's our immediate response? What do we usually do? When you don't know something or when you're unsure, what do? Ask a question. We ask Google, obviously. And on this day of Malchut in Hod, hopefully we can commit ourselves to being honest about our limitations so that we can make space for greatness. So we flip back now to page 58 for Mourner's Kaddish. And tonight, as we say Mourner's Kaddish, we extend our condolences to Karen Salkin and her family on the passing of her mother, Sue Einhorn. And we also extend our condolences to Kathy Gordon, who works in our office, on the passing of Mark's mother, Ricky. And Sue was laid to rest yesterday, Ricky today, and they're all still in the period of Shiva, even though they've sort of paused for Shabbat. But we send our condolences to them, especially through these next few days. So I invite those who are in mourning to rise, along with all those who might wish to rise in support of the mourners, or for those who have no one to say Kaddish for them. Yitzgadal v'yitzkadash shemei rabbah v'alma divra kirutei v'almich malchutei v'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael v'agala u'v'zman kari v'imru amen. Yehi shmei rabba mevarach li'olam olamei omaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei tekudasha brichu le'ela v'kol virchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiran v'yoma v'imru amen. Yehi Shlomo Rabba Min Shemaya V'chaim Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. Oseh Shalom B'mromav Hu Ya'aseh Shalom Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. May the one who creates peace on high bring peace to us, to all Israel, and to all who dwell on earth. And we say, Amen.
Amen.
You may be seated. So, we will see you back here tomorrow morning, bright and early, at 9:30, as we get super excited to welcome Davin to the Bima as he becomes bar mitzvah. And services will be both in person and on YouTube for those of you who are joining us in that way tomorrow. And we will end our service with the priestly blessing and then the motzi before we head on into dinner for those of us in the room who are going to be doing that. And the priestly blessing can be found on page 75. And it is a tradition in many Jewish households to offer this blessing to our children every Friday night. And so if your loved ones are near you and you want to put your arms around them, feel free. If they are not and you want to just think of them and kind of send your warm wishes off into the ether, and hopefully they will find their way. But we can offer this blessing to one another. May God bless you and protect you. May God's face give light to you and show you favor. May God's face be lifted toward you and bestow upon you peace. May it be God's will.
Amen.
Mayani, would you be able to help lead us in Motzi?
Would you like to go up? She says no.
Okay. Dahlia, would you like to come help lead us in Motzi? Dev, Hayden, do you want to come help lead us in Motzi with Dahlia? Please go. Come on up. Are we doing like the blessing or the preschool one? You can do the preschool one. Okay. We'll do the preschool one. Ha-motzi lechem min haaretz. We give thanks to God for bread. Yeah, we won't touch it. Our voices join in song together as our prayer is humbly said. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Ha-motzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. It's still in the bag.
That sometimes happens.
It's a little cold. Here you go.
The Zeus. Okay. Oopsie.
Shabbat shalom.